Are we on, Elton? Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. The time is now 7:06. If we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Reading of the meeting notice. This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the open meeting session that the Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its annual reorganization meeting held on January 5th, 2021. The meeting set forth the schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona Cedar Grove Times, the Star Ledger, the Township of Verona, and the VEA. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted at the Verona Board of Education office and on the Verona Public Schools District website. The Verona Board of Education operates under a consent agenda format. Any board member has the right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public and press. Mr. Cruz, can you please take a roll call for attendance?
Mr. Allworth,
Here.
Mr. Day,
Here.
Mrs. Drappi,
Here.
Mrs. Fresky, absent. Mrs. Prisco,
Here.
you have quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. And first up tonight, we have our final superintendent report from Dr. Dionisio.
Good evening, and thank you, Mrs. Drappi. Good evening, everyone. I just have one brief statement to just share with the board and the public this evening. Over the past 7 years, it has been an honor and a privilege to have served as your superintendent of schools alongside this dedicated Board of Education and all of the Board of Education members that came before you over the past 7.5 years. In addition, with an exemplary leadership team, Dr. Moriello and Dr. Miller, who are here, and Mr. Cruz, as well as all of the other administrators that I've had the privilege and honor to work alongside. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also share the wonderfully talented, dedicated, and caring educators that we have in the Verona Public Schools. The work that they do, all of these people, each and every day, does not go unnoticed, and it is all in the best interest of our children. And that's what makes Verona a great place to live and a great place to learn. And it's just a wonderful place to work. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of something bigger than myself. And in our partnership, we have strengthened and supported our outstanding school system. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to have had the opportunity to lead this wonderful school district, and I'm proud of the progress that we've all made. I know that over the past 7.5 years, we have continued to build upon the success with academics and athletics and music and social emotional learning and our facilities and capital improvements and so many other wonderful things that have come to fruition. Our school community has come together to advance that vision and that strategic plan with the mission and the core values that we espouse and that we value so deeply. Verona will always have a special place in my heart. 2 of my 3 children graduated from Verona High School. I've had the great fortune of being able to live in Verona for over 13 years. My only regret is that I didn't move to Verona sooner, and that's how wonderful of a place it is. It is with bittersweet emotions that I leave this wonderful school district to continue my professional journey, as I will now continue to serve as superintendent of schools in the Ramapo Indian Hills Regional High School District. Serving Verona has been the most rewarding experience of my professional journey. I will take with me the fondest of memories and the wonderful relationships, first and foremost, that have been developed and that I will continue to sustain and maintain with all those wonderful people. I have the utmost faith that Verona Public Schools are in wonderful hands with the team of people that are here on this stage and the people that are working in our district and our community. I wish all of you well. I thank you for the opportunity. I thank all of our teachers and administrators for the amazing work that they do each and every day. And I want you to be able to continue on to support all of our students. And I wish Verona well. Thank you. And that concludes my final superintendent report for the Verona Public Schools.
Thank you,
just-
Dr. Dinicio. On behalf of the board, I would like to say thank you for your service to our district. Throughout your tenure, you have continuously put students first, and it shows. Under your leadership, we have climbed academically to heights never before seen in Verona. We now offer students more educational opportunities than ever before, including social and emotional curriculum and support. Our buildings are the safest and best maintained they have ever been. Our faculty and staff are continuously learning and are more equipped than ever to provide for our students. All this has been accomplished with one of the most fiscally responsible budgets in our comp districts. I have truly enjoyed working with you, watching you grow as a leader and as a person. Your empathy and humanistic approach to all situations is admirable and evident in how you care deeply for every single student and staff member enrolled in our district. Although this is bittersweet, we wish you the best of luck in your next chapter.
Thank you very much.
And I just want to chime in real quick. I was here for Dr. Dinicio's first meeting before he was a doctor. I think he was just a mister.
I was just Mr.
And I'm here for your finale meeting with the Verona District. And I just want to say, I mean, Mrs. Drappi covered it, but you have elevated this district from where we were. I mean, part of the reason why I joined this board was we didn't have the technology, we didn't have Wi-Fi, and you were involved in that first big referendum to get us that, to give us the facility upgrades, to give us a field that didn't have potholes, to give us those Chromebooks, to bring us where we are today. And thank goodness we did that, because if COVID had hit, we had this pandemic and we weren't prepared for it, we'd be like suffering like some other districts were in the area. So that was part of your vision and your strategy. And then we had another referendum and you were involved in that, and you basically picked up the ball on that and became the director of facilities temporarily and went above and beyond. So you did a wonderful job. You helped get my kids through the district, along with most people on the board who have students. And you changed the culture. You helped move this district in a direction where we were recognized, whether locally, statewide, or even nationally. And a lot of it has to do with all the directions and moves you made and the staff you brought in and helped to get this district where we are today. So we want to keep on that tradition of moving forward and elevating where we are. I just want to, sincerely give you, thanks from me, from the board, and from, the parents in this community, because I've heard from many parents and students that, really appreciate what you've done to bring us where we are today.
Thank you.
To chime in also. I know everyone, Ms. Drappi spoke for the board, but on a personal level, I just want to thank you as well. The last 3 years have been pretty rough for all of us up here, but you and I have had a lot of conversations about the inner workings of the districts and schools, and I've really learned a lot about how to run a district. I've learned I never want to run a district, but I mean, to see how you stayed so focused on the goals and the strategic plan and just keep focusing on moving forward was just really admirable in light of everything that's been going on, and for you to be able to continue to do that was very impressive. And Ramapo Indian Hills is very fortunate to have you, and we'll miss you, and thank you for everything.
Thank you.
I'm going to chime in as well. Dr. Dinicio, I just want to say thank you, and I want to wish you all the best. We definitely started off a little rocky when I first became a board member. I remember sitting my first time in your office when I first became a board member, and you saying, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And we did. And ever since then, I feel we've grown. I've learned a tremendous amount from you. Being on the board, it's a lot of work, but you've always been there to answer any questions and have always been very helpful and always listening to concerns, whether they were right or wrong. You always had an answer and respected my opinions, and I appreciate that. And the one thing that I would like to say that I always found, so sincere about you was whenever you would see me or even other people would mention that they always thought that conversation with you, you always asked about their children. You always asked, how's Stephen? How's Andrew doing? Always. So that's one thing that goes a very long way with me, because I'm a very, that means a lot to people. And it meant a lot to me as well. So good luck to you. You will be missed. And thank you.
Thank you. Best wishes.
Okay. With that, our next item of business is the business administrative report. Mr. Cruz?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I have a few updates, part of the business administrator report. With new staff members in the business office this past month, we've worked extremely hard on improving operational efficiencies and strengthening the support to our schools from the business office. As mentioned last month, we're also working closely with our auditors to prepare for the 2020-21 audit taking place next month. The audit will be finalized by the end of this calendar year, and we look forward to reporting out on the audit by the end of January 2022. And lastly, on tonight's agenda, we have resolution number 13. It's the refunding bond ordinance. This is a refinance opportunity to reduce the interest rate on our 2014 and 2015 bonds. Depending on how favorable the market is, the estimated annual savings will be $63,866 each year. And it's a total debt service savings of approximately $707,000. This is a significant savings on our debt service, and we hope that the interest rates moves downward in order to capture the greater savings for our school district. And those are the updates that I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Next up is committee reports. Only the Finance Committee met. That was myself, Ms. Fresky, and Mr. Cruz. Let's see, what did we talk about? So we spoke about, really the majority of the meeting was concerning the National School Lunch Program. We've heard from residents, and we spoke about different ways that we can improve the application process, make it more accessible, as well as ways that we can do more outreach to try and capture as many families as possible. Specifically, we talked about removing the need to submit tax info. That suggestion came in from a citizen, and we thought that that was a wonderful idea. Something else that I brought to the table was the National School Lunch Program has on their website, they have a questionnaire that people can fill out, and that helps folks determine whether or not it is worth it for them to fill out the application itself. And just to clarify, Mr. Cruz, and I know we've spoken about this at meetings, but just to repeat, that application is a federal application. So it's not really up to us what the application itself looks like, but we can remove the tax, the income tax requirement, tax return requirement, I should say.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So we felt that the questionnaire was a good starting point for people, because I think people think, okay, it's National School Lunch Program. There's no way I qualify, but I think people would be surprised. So that will help people even know if it's worth it for them to fill out the application or not. And within that questionnaire is also an opportunity if people find that they won't qualify, even if they do apply. There's a lot of information within that questionnaire itself that provides folks who may still be struggling with other opportunities to receive help. We also discussed during Finance Committee National School Lunch Program about reaching out to faith leaders, Human Needs Food Pantry, but Holy Spirit Pantry. I know it was mentioned that The Children's Fund through the township also can give us some information on folks that may need to apply but don't know that they should apply. And that was really it for National School Lunch Program. Mr. Cruz reported out on our debt service refinance opportunity. And we also spoke about making sure that our spreadsheet regarding our legal fees pertaining to grievances and mediation, that was updated continuously as well. Another thing that we discussed, another thing that we discussed was misinformation from the candidates forum. One of the candidates mentioned that our maintenance reserves were at an all-time low, I believe. And I may be misquoting, and I do apologize for that, but it was regarding our maintenance reserves. So I just wanted to make sure that, we had a good understanding of what was going on. So in 2017, our maintenance reserves were actually brought down to $81,000, which is very low. But in 2018, they were brought back up to $150,000, which is standard for a district of this size. But I think the big win is after our audit last year, our capital reserves were actually up to around 1.1 million, which is an all-time high. So I just wanted to make sure that that was, understood for the public, and that, we had a discussion around that if needed. Another thing we talked about was that our legal reserves were brought up to $209,000, which pertains to the legal fee updates that we were talking about in the spreadsheet. And that was our finance committee. Anything else to add, Mr. Cruz?
I think that's a good summary of the conversation. I know that where we are when it comes to the National School Lunch Survey, we closed the survey on Friday. So at this time, we are actually analyzing the results and to be better determine the next steps forward. So we'll be sharing that most likely at the next meeting.
Thank you. That was a question I was about to ask. So thank you for answering that in advance. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, next up on the agenda is public comments on agenda action items only. If you have any comments on agenda action items, please step to the podium, state your name and address. Okay, I do not see anyone. Moving on to, so we're going to close public comments on agenda action items. Moving on to number 9, discussion items, old or new business. Does anyone have anything they wanted to discuss?
Yes, Mrs. Drappi. So a few things I would like to mention. There was a bunch of senior nights that happened that I attended. So boys soccer, I was at boys soccer senior night. So that was a great event. They had a wonderful night for that. Was at the football senior night at cheerleaders and the band, which was this past Friday night. Another great event, seeing all the seniors getting acknowledged. And then they also acknowledged the 8th graders from the Verona Eagles football and cheering program that will be moving, either attending Verona High School or other high schools, but they were acknowledged as well. So that was very nice to see. Breast cancer awareness, volleyball had their breast cancer outage out that, and Minette's Angels was there. And that was also a wonderful event. And I started today, unfortunately, New Jersey workshops for school boards is not in person, which to me, I like seeing people. So anyway, it's online. So today was the first day to take some classes online. So I was able to hop on a little bit today to some of the classes. One class I did sign up for, again, was the best practices of the board's leadership and what goes on during a board, just to always, see what goes on and to hear other board members. And obviously the past 19 months for all boards has been difficult, and schools and teachers and administrators. And then the other class that I happened to hop on, which I didn't even realize until she mentioned Verona. I was like, she was a speaker. Our librarian, Mrs. Malaspina, was one of the speakers for the class that I happened to jump on. It was called "What's in Your Students' Backpacks." So it was just happened. I thought it was an interesting topic, so I jumped on, and there she was speaking. So it was nice to see her, and it was about information that comes home, regarding equity and the privileges of that go on in the schools districts with children maybe not having the access to, websites and internet service and computers, and how it affects, how we are lucky here in Verona that we do have every child is able to get on a Chromebook and was able to do that during COVID. So there's Wednesday and Thursday are more classes. So I'll be sure to report back. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Briscoe. Thank you for going to the workshops. I regret that there's just no possible way that I can make it this week with everything that I have going on. And I really do regret it, because when you look at the agenda, there's like 30 different classes that you can take every day. But I thank you for sacrificing your time to do that, because it does take a lot of time, but it's really important work. So, anything that you have that you can report back to us and you can teach us, please do.
All the classes will be, once they get everything, will be online also for us to view. So that'll be nice as well.
That's good. That's a change from previous years. So that's good. I went to the Festival of Bands. What night was that? Was it Saturday night? Oh boy. The days are blending. And that was amazing. Unfortunately, because we had a prior commitment earlier in the night, we didn't get to go see the whole thing, but my daughter and I went, and we got to see the last three bands, and that was West Orange, Livingston, and Elizabeth, and then Verona. And I'm so blown away. I mean, the work that goes into it, it's just fascinating. And what I was really pleased to see, and I actually text Mr. Allworth about this, that our entire high school football team was there to not only support and cheer on the band and the color guard and our music parents, who work an amazing amount of hours for our band, but they formed sort of a tunnel for everybody to walk through as they came off the field. And that's like that, as a person who was in band and played at every football game for 4 years, I can't tell you what that means. So thank you to the football team for coming out to support.
The band is incredibly impressive. I
Unbelievable.
wasn't able to make the festival, which was really upsetting to me as a music teacher and former marching band teacher. My son was sick, so I wasn't able to get there. But I've watched them at every football game this year, and just the progress is unbelievable. And Friday night I saw them and I was like, wow, they've gotten good.
Outstanding.
So
Yeah, really.
They're really impressive this year.
Does anyone else have any other discussion items to add?
Ms. Drappi, just real quick, we do have our second speaker of our parent series coming up this Thursday, October 28th, here at the VHS auditorium between 7 and 8:30. Dr. Susie Millar is coming to talk about anxiety and how to cope at home with it. We invited our middle school and high school students also to this presentation, so hopefully it could be some sort of a parent night moving forward. Dr. Moore's presentation is still on our health and wellness website. She did a wonderful job giving us some parent tips and giving us the umbrella of how the next couple of speaker series are going to be working. So
Great.
tomorrow's Thursday's speaker series is going to be on anxiety and how to cope at home with it.
And am I right in saying that students, middle school and high school students, are invited and should come?
Yes, we would love to have that participation. We also opened it up to Glen Ridge and also Cedar Grove
Wonderful.
to try to get more participants. We're getting great email openings and people are viewing it, but unfortunately the participation just hasn't been there yet. So we're hoping to fill the auditorium up.
Yeah, the first one that we went to was absolutely unbelievable with Dr. Kelly Moore. I can't encourage folks enough to come out to this. It's worth it. It's an hour and a half, right? Hour and 15 minutes. If you want to stay after and have discussion, that would be great. It's worth every second of your time. You cannot be educated enough about this. So thank you, Dr. Mariello.
Want to chime in too? I saw that the district calendar for 22-23 is complete and being voted on today. So we just want to make sure everybody out there in the public knows that the district calendar's on the website and finalized and good to go for next year.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Okay, if that's the end for discussion items, we will move to our resolutions for tonight. If I can get a motion, please, to move resolutions 1 through 13. So moved by Ms. Prisco,
Second,
second by Mr. Allworth. Any discussion on resolution items? I actually have a question on resolution number 11. So I know Legacy has been managing the referendum for us. And there's a proposal to extend the construction management services. But I see in the documentation that there's actually a reduction in the amount that it's going to cost us. Dr. Dionisio, can you give us some clarification on that, please?
Sure. So resolution 11 is for approval of extending the contract for construction management firm for Legacy Construction Management Incorporated. The contract on has been reduced because of the total amount has been reduced to $10,500 monthly. That's as a result of the reduction in the amount of work that's necessary. So there is a scaling down now at this point in the amount of construction management hours. And that's the direct result of the completion of the referendum coming to a close. So the construction project with ECC, the construction firm, has been reduced significantly because we're getting closer to the closeout and punch list items and closeout documents. This contract is necessary because of the cost savings to the board of the $8,000 a month and the reduction in those hours. So it resets what the contract is with Legacy Construction, and it goes through January. As a precaution, we do believe that the majority of the work, all of the work, will be completed by December. It's really coming down to being wrapped up now at this point. So that's why we have that resolution on this evening.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments about resolution items 1 through 13? Nope. Okay. Mr. Cruz, can you take a roll call to vote on resolutions 1 through 13?
Mr. Allworth,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
yes.
Mrs. Drappi,
Yes.
Mrs. Prisco.
Yes.
We have quorum, motion passed.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. We also have an addendum tonight. Can I have a motion to move addenda items number 1
12.
through 12?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Day. Second by Ms. Prisco. Any items for discussion or questions?
I just would like to add one, it's not a question, it's just a comment really for Ms. Torsia. I would just like to wish her well in her retirement. Sorry to see her leave, but I could see her wanting to be with her granddaughter, so.
I was going to give her a shout out too, because she's always been great. Every time
Yeah.
you came to the high school office, she was always there to help, and whatever you needed, she was there to do it for you. So I want to wish her well.
Best wishes, yes. I would like to quickly just discuss addendum resolution number 6. As we get closer to, I guess, approving the person who will take charge of our district diversity and equity and inclusion program. And I believe the idea is to try to get that on for the next agenda. We'll have to go through Ed Committee for that. It's such a huge undertaking. The diversity, equity and inclusion committee is massive and very long-term, and requires a plan to be put in place that matches that long-term goal. And I think, when we find that right person, which like I said, we're really close to, and tonight we're approving Dr. Miller as the coordinator. I think the facilitator will be a nice supporting role for that. I also want to discuss number 8, the unused vacation days for Dr. Dionisio. That is a standard part of the contract. It's in most superintendent contracts. It was approved by the county superintendent. It was approved by the state, and it was negotiated as part of the contract. And all that information can be found on the superintendent's page on our district website, if anybody has any questions about that. Anybody have anything else to add? Okay, Mr. Cruz, can I get a roll call to vote on addendum resolutions number 1 through 12, please?
Mr. Allworth,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mrs. Drappi,
Yes,
Mrs. Prisco.
Yes.
We have quorum, motion passed.
thank you, Mr. Cruz. Okay, next up on our list is public comments. If anyone has public comments, please come to the podium. Please clearly state your name and your address.
Kristen Donahue, 31 South Prospect Street. I have a couple of questions, so hopefully I don't run over. The first one is about the National School Lunch Program. So as far as that goes, I'm just curious when you would be making a decision about that. And if it's too late to implement this school year, when would that decision be made going forward? My second question is, it states in the budget that the estimated 2021 capital reserves budget is $500,000. Doesn't that show a drop from 1.1 million from 2020? And if estimated, why did we start the school year without knowing what our exact reserves were? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. So I'll start off and then Mr. Cruz can take the second part of the first question and then the second question. So on the National School Lunch Program, so Mr. Cruz has been working with the administrative team, with the board committees, with central office administration. Surveys went out to parents in the community to be able to get feedback. We're going to be reviewing that survey feedback, analyzing it, taking that into consideration. I know Mr. Cruz has also met with our student council representatives at Verona High School to get their feedback as well. At this time, no decision has been made. Before a decision can be made by the board, it has to be recommended from the superintendent to the Board of Education. And we are at this point not at that level yet because we're still analyzing those results. I know, Mr. Cruz, is there anything you'd like to add in regards to what the steps in the process would be long-term in partnership? And if a decision is not made now, then what the possibilities would be in the future?
So basically the process for the National School Lunch Program at this time, because the application process is closed, there's actually an agreement called the consolidated agreement. What that means is that we will have to partner up with a school that actually has a National School Lunch Program, and it cannot be a school district that has National School Lunch for the first time. So it has to be an existing school district with the program that has been already in it for more than a year. The next step after that, once we will go with that, is to work with our service provider, in this case it's Pumptonian, to be able to provide that. I know that there are a few factors which we are working on internally, and another factor is actually supply chain issues that Pumptonian and other service providers are having at the moment with National School Lunch products. So that's a concern, and we want to make sure that if we make a decision to go into the program, it's not going to be disruptive, and it's not something that is going to curtail on the process. The other piece will be if we decide not to go into the program now, and the USDA and the federal government continues providing this waiver of eligibility past this calendar academic year of 2021-22 and continue that for the 22-23 school year, that will give us an opportunity to get in it and also receive the reimbursable dollars. I think one of the negatives right now in the position that we have right now is that we wouldn't be benefiting from any of the reimbursable funding that comes with the program. I think right now it's a little bit challenging because we had to find another partnering district that will be able to go into the consolidation agreement and also take on the financial burden of doing the reporting and the compliance pieces behind the scene. The one thing that we do get from the consolidated agreement is that all of our students in Verona will be receiving free meals. So we do see that as the plus, but then there's also these other variable factors that we have to really take into account and make a decision on.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Cruz, have you, I just had a question. Have you, since the school lunch program will impact the SCAs if we decide to go forward with that? Have you talked to the SCAs, or I believe maybe some of the administration has talked to the SCAs leadership about
Yes.
that?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Day. So I've have a few meetings with our administrators, and since the administration has turned around and had one-on-one meetings with each of their SCA leadership. So the impact when we quantified the impact of the prior to the pandemic, it was a little over $51,000 in total from all 4 SCAs at the elementary school. So it is a significant impact when we quantify that piece. So that's actually another big component in it. And like we mentioned before, once we go into the National School Lunch Program, that's going to be one area where we won't be able to exclude one school from participating. The entire district will have to participate.
To Mr. Day's point, has the SCA weighed in at all, though? Have they sort of given you any specific feedback?
So the feedback is they understand that the pros and cons with the National School Lunch and the decision. They're just waiting on the district office to make a decision on it, to then turn around and pivot and think of other fundraising opportunities that we'll have to do. So they haven't really they just voiced the impact of what it will have on their fundraising and their activities and what they do at the school level. But they're ready to kind of like, pivot. And I think having that right now in the middle of the year might be a little more harder to kind of like pivot and do a turnaround like that, as opposed to starting now in the beginning of the school year, having time to kind of like think and process and even do that. I think if we would have been in this situation early on and allow them to kind of like process and think about the fundraising opportunity is less disruptive than doing it in the middle of the school year.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a couple other points too that I didn't mention on Finance Committee, but I should have, is that you had said that at the last meeting, we reported out that we have 17 students who at that time were participating, who at the time were enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program that the board covers. And we now have 24 students, which I think is wonderful that we have more students who are enrolling. And hopefully, the more outreach we do, the more we can capture. I also think it's important to make sure, from a transparency and public standpoint, that this survey was for the CARES Act portion of the National School Lunch Program. The National School Lunch Program also is a year-round outside of the CARES Act, where we would apply for reimbursement for those specific students who were enrolled. Whereas the CARES Act version of it is just a blanket, everybody gets free lunch. We would front the money and we would get reimbursed. Again, assuming we could apply for the next school year. For this school year, we do not get any reimbursement if we were to join in a consolidated agreement. Okay. Thank you.
That is correct. And just to clarify, one of the pieces, it is 24. Actually, as of this morning, it's 25 students. We actually had a new enrollee student who came from Colombia, and they actually submitted their application, so it's up to 25. So at this time, the board funds 25 students, whether they qualify for the free or the reduced meal. So that's actually a total of 25. The other clarification, I think someone asked about advanced placement exam fees and college applications. Those are things that we also do cover at the time not being in the National School Lunch Program. So all the benefits that the program provides, currently the Verona Board of Education provides it for those students as well.
I think something else important to mention is policy 8550, which specifically addresses how it sets a policy on how the district addresses those who are in debt for school lunches. So essentially it outlines, and I encourage everybody to go look at it, but what it does is it does outline how we would go about addressing those who are purchasing school lunch but are not paying for it, and how that can sort of tie into the National School Lunch Program. I think in looking at that policy too, it's very clearly laid out. But I think from an individual standpoint, there is definitely a nuance that comes from having that conversation with individuals too. So.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Cruz, can you speak to the second part of Mrs. Donahue's question regarding the reserve account?
So one of the clarifying pieces, when we look at the user-friendly budget presentation that's available publicly, and this is typical for a lot of school districts, the actual numbers is always going to be the column on your left. That's actually going to be the actual. And I know that you refer to the proposed budget, and many times the proposed budget is just a proposal at the time, and it all goes to where the anticipation is going to be. So even if and I can't actually say this for a fact because this was actually submitted by the prior business administrator who was here at the time as an acting board secretary. Not sure what's the rationale of not doing something that's more aligned to where we ended up the year last year, but it's also a way to be conservative and to end the year in a positive. So if I actually say that I'm actually going to end with $0 and I actually come back and give you $100, it makes it seem that, I was actually more prudent and more efficient in that. So I'm not actually justifying that that's actually the rationale, but that's something that I could look into and get back and provide a more clarification around the decision making on that budget proposal that was submitted at the beginning of the school year.
Mr. Cruz, what I could also add, while you were talking, I pulled up a spreadsheet from our finance committee just with some numbers to just reflect back on the audit. So in 2014-15, when I arrived as superintendent, and the board knows this, the public knows this, from a financial standpoint, we've always operated very, very lean in our operating budget. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing for the taxpayers, but it also forces us as an administration and a leadership team and as a board of education to be extremely thoughtful, strategic, and have a vision and foresight as to where we want to go and to establish a budget that will allow us to fund projects on an annual operating basis, and also to be able to fund maintenance and capital reserve projects. That in combination with second questions that we've coupled with the referenda in order to do the large scale capital improvement projects that, quite honestly, for decades, as we all know, were neglected, either because they weren't put up to vote, or what did happen in prior years, it was put up to vote to the community taxpayer, and it just did not sustain the support, and it didn't pass. Fortunately, in 2008, in 2014 and in 2019. We passed some pretty significant budgets. Just since 2014, in a combination of 2 referenda projects and an ESIP project, Energy Savings Improvement Project, that we initiated in 2015, we have completed nearly $50 million worth of work in all 6 of our schools. It's significant. It's significant not only because it was long overdue, but it puts us on a manageable cycle from a facilities improvement plan and our 5-year long-range facility plan in order to be able to continue to keep up with the work. It also allows us to be very thoughtful around how we're going to cycle debt service later on when it starts rolling off in future referenda, which will come up in probably about another 6 or 7 years. So that's something to be extremely mindful of when we get into like 2026, 27, and 28. As that starts to roll off, we really want to be in a position where we're going to be able to go out to another referenda and do several $1 million worth of work, and it should be budget neutral to the taxpayer. That's really critically important to have that vision. Along the lines of the operating budget, this board knows that it wasn't too long ago that at the end of the year, our surplus was as low in some years as $22,000 or $23,000. You don't have to take my word for it. Go look at the audits that are all public documents and have been approved and have been presented. That posed challenges. In addition to that, that's the way you're able to fund your capital and your maintenance reserve accounts. So what are capital and maintenance reserve accounts? Those are accounts that we're able to put surplus into. So that way we can fund projects that we need in order to just maintain our facilities without going out to a referenda. We don't have a lot of money lying around that you can just go and do $20 and $30 million worth of work. Maintenance reserve is exactly how it sounds, maintenance. It's a line item that allows us to fund. So that way we can take surplus, put it in that account. So that way we can fund that kind of project that is maintaining our facilities. Alternatively, capital reserve is really more long-term. Think 10 plus years. You're going to be investing. You can use your capital reserve account in order to install new lockers, which are going to last decades, new flooring, things of that nature. The reason I give that context is because in 2014, our capital reserve account was only $89,000. And that's really low. It's extremely low. Our maintenance reserve was about $218,000. So moving forward, I'm not going to, this is all public information as part of our audits, but I just want to illustrate here the trajectory that we've been able to demonstrate and accomplish. Our reserve accounts were very low at $308,000 in 2014. We had, as we all know, a very difficult budget year back in 2018, where we had some staff cuts. And that's a combination of the challenges that we had with the budget, with a 2% cap, and being able to just manage the annual operations of the district. After that, we continued to tighten our fiscal efficiencies. So we were hovering around 300, 400,000, 330, 349. And then we were able to build our total reserve account to 720. And now, as of the last audit, we were at almost 1.2 million. That does not include last year. So Mr. Cruz will be working with our auditor in the next few months as we conduct the next audit. And that will be part of a public discussion and a report in probably January, February or so. And at that point, that audit will demonstrate to the business office and to the board how much additional revenue will be there. And that way that funding could be allocated to maintenance and capital reserve. And the good news here is that the Verona Public Schools is on the upward trajectory from a financial standpoint in the direction that we're moving. So I feel very good about that for this board.
So can I just ask a quick question, not to beat this dead, but just so I understand. So the reason it said 500,000 on there as an estimated is because we wanted to be conservative with our estimation in order to make sure that every year we're ending with a surplus, with a healthy surplus.
So that could be one strategy that the business administrator chose. Also, the fact that we're currently in the referendum on closing that out, it could be also that just being conservative with what's going to be ending and the need to actually draw into the reserve. So initially, we ended the capital reserve with over $1 million that year, and then when you're budgeting, you want to be conservative, especially in the middle of a referendum where there's actually change orders and additional scopes of the work that's actually coming in. I believe that was actually a way to kind of like say, okay, let's be conservative. We're not sure what changes are going to come in and are we actually going to go over. So it's a way to be conservative. I think at this point, I actually believe that we're going to be more than $1 million, more than what we actually ended that past year. So I'll double check and connect with the former acting board secretary at the time, and I'll get the details on the rationale and why those numbers were
Thank
used
you.
for the budget.
I think it's just like, from a transparency standpoint, it's like, what if we know and we're reporting out on this actual number, why does the number that is, in the budget, or why does the number that's on the website look different?
Right.
I think that's
And,
reasonable.
right. And as I mentioned,
Right.
those were the budgeted estimates.
Right.
So those are the
Right.
estimates, and
Okay.
it could be that the business administrator wanted to be super conservative and
Okay.
kind of like get a bigger haha, as opposed to saying I'm going to actually end with 1.5 million and then come in at 1.5 and $5. No one is going to like
Right.
cheer you on.
I think being conservative with your estimate is fiscally responsible in general. You know what I mean? Not to make yourself look good, but
Right.
you want that big cushion. Okay. In
Absolutely.
case something drops, you can catch it before it falls apart. So
Right. And
I don't disagree with that. I just want to know, like, the reasoning behind like, what are we seeing? Why are we seeing something that's different than what it actually is? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Right? If we know what the number is, it's the number, but what we use in our budget may be different. So, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And typically it's more or less like 15-20% up or down. So this is a big, it is budget wise, as far as like an estimate, it is a big difference. So I'll look into it and then I'll report back on the next meeting. Yeah.
Are there any other questions or concerns for public comment? Please just state your name and your address, please.
Good evening, Monica Vincent, 36 Montclair Avenue. First and foremost, I just want to extend a thank you to the board. You are stewards for the taxpayers. For many of us, it's 45, 50%, probably more at this point, of our taxes go to this school district. And I know that you all work tirelessly. I don't envy the positions that you're in, because you do put, just based on what I've heard, not only tonight, but since I purchased my home here over 3 years ago, what all of you do collectively as well as individually speaks volumes. So thank you for that. The second, I actually have 4 comments. So that was the first comment. The second comment is, and I recognize that it's not under your wheelhouse, but I attended, or I watched last week's candidates forum, and I feel like the candidates, as well as the taxpayers, there was a disservice to them, because I think some of the questions that were asked of them are really not questions that should be asked of a board member. Some of those questions were probably directed to the administration and so forth. So I think in future, I think there needs to be an education on what the board can and cannot do. And again, I thought all of the candidates answered as best they could, but I think at the same time, it was a disservice to them and as well as the taxpayers. Thirdly, over the last couple of months, I'm hearing a lot about accessibility to this meeting. And as I mentioned, when I purchased my home here over 3 years ago, I travel a lot for work. And I am passionate about education. And oftentimes I would be watching the YouTube channel before the pandemic. And that's how I would get my information. The current board, current administration, as well as the previous, have always been accommodating if I've ever had questions. So I support you in what you need to do to stay safe, as well as get the information out there. With that said, I don't have children in the district at this time. And as a taxpayer, I would like to recommend that there's better communication. I understand there's a survey going out about the new superintendent and so forth. I consider myself an investor. Or taxpayer. I'm investing in this community. I believe in this school district. I believe in Verona. And I feel like I should have some input on that. Fourth and finally, I wish the superintendent all of the best with his family. I wish you the best. Hopefully your journey remains extremely welcoming and positive in your new position. With that said, you also have a daunting task as a board to select the next superintendent. And there's two things that I want to really encourage you to look or to ask of the candidates. One is, what is the organizational structure going to be for that administration? This is approximately 2,200, 2,300 K-12 enrollment here. And personally, I feel like it's a bit top heavy. And I just would like to see more of that focus, that emphasis really at the school level. That's the first thing. The second thing is, again, I'm passionate about education. If you saw today, Ed Reports, which is an independent organization that reviews curriculum materials, they reviewed materials that this district is currently using, and they did not meet expectations. Last meeting I was here, unfortunately I had to leave early, but Dr. Moriello, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, he gave a great presentation on mental health, but I'd like to add one thing to what he said. Kids are impacted, obviously, with what's going on at home. Maybe here it's, with friends, with family, but the materials also have an impact. If students are struggling to read, and that continues, that snowballs by the time they get to HB, that can be detrimental to their mental health as well. And that's the only thing that I would add to his excellent presentation. The quality of instructional materials are important so that we ensure that every student is learning to read, learning, period. But it also is important because as a taxpayer, I don't want to see the teachers here in this community, in this district, having to go
Excuse me,
spend
Ms.
additional
Vincent.
money on other resources. Thank you
Excuse
so
me.
much.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know time's
No,
up.
I'm
Yep.
good. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Vincent.
Thank you for your comments.
Any other comments?
And I do not see anyone else for public comment. We will close public comment. And that is it. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
So moved by Mr. Day,
Second.
second by Ms. Prisco. All in favor?
Aye.
And that ends the meeting at 8:05 PM. Thank you, everybody.